Before we get into this one, I need everyone to stand with me today, because with everything going on around Drake, Iceman, and the entire bot army that follows him, we are dealing with a reality that is somehow even worse than academics just eating his way through another stream while pretending to know things. The energy today is chaos, the tone is frustration, and we have got a lot of ground to cover. So leave a like, subscribe, and let's get into it. Ever since Kendrick Lamar was spotted at Disneyland, just enjoying time with his family, completely unbothered, Drake's propaganda machine has been cranked up to a level we haven't seen since 2024. The contrast between the two is so stark that it seems to have genuinely rattled everyone in the Drake camp. Academics is ordering more DoorDash, Maul is crashing out harder than ever, and the entire OVO support system has gone into overdrive, trying to manufacture excitement for an album that still doesn't exist. And before we can even get into all the manufactured noise that academics, Maul, and the rest of the Iceman cheerleaders are making, we need to stop and address something even more embarrassing, baffling, and honestly kind of stunning. Because Drake did something directly, something he personally decided to do. Presumably because people care more about Kendrick walking around Disneyland with a Starbucks than about anything Drake has released in years. And apparently that reality pushed him to a breaking point.
Because Drake finally pushed the button, the red button, literally. Drake commissioned a giant smoke production in the Toronto sky, a real-life red button moment that had the entire city confused, startled, and looking around trying to figure out what was happening. And it gets worse. This was apparently designed as a coded diss to Kendrick Lamar. He built a spite production, named it Project Bot, and set off a smoke cloud over his own city at night to promote an album he hasn't finished yet. I genuinely don't know where to start.
First off, imagine just having a calm evening in Toronto and suddenly seeing a massive cloud in the sky accompanied by a loud noise, and then finding out it was Drake doing an album promo stunt. That is why your own city likes Kendrick more than you. That is why Kendrick can sell out the Rogers Center and you struggle to fill the same seats. You are annoying your own residents for an album that isn't even ready. It's obnoxious, it's tone-deaf, and it is so deeply on brand for where Drake is right now.
And with this Project Bot production being confirmed as beef-driven content, directly designed to reference and take shots at Kendrick, we now know this is going to be used as part of the Iceman rollout. Whether it becomes a trailer for Episode 4, a music video backdrop, or some kind of album announcement with an actual release date, this smoke cloud is going to show up again. And when it does, Drake is going to be standing next to it, looking ridiculous. Because what song in Drake's entire catalog has ever justified this kind of theatrical production?
Let me ask everyone something seriously. It is 2026. One participant in the biggest rap battle of all time is at Disneyland with his family, completely at peace, and the other is outside alone, commissioning industrial smoke clouds over his city in the middle of the night, named after a diss to the guy who beat him, and he's posting it like a movie villain staring over his kingdom. This is the temperature of where Drake actually is emotionally, and it just gave every rapper from Pusha T to Jay-Z free material without them having to write a single bar. Because for Kendrick Lamar, you already had this guy filing lawsuits over rap beef, and now he's taking all that same unresolved anger and literally launching it into the sky. That gap between what Kendrick does with a pen and what Drake does with a smoke machine is the entire story of this era. Kendrick puts words on paper that reshape the culture. Drake sets off pyrotechnics over a city that doesn't even like him that much anymore. This is what it looks like when you have no confidence in your actual music.
And Project Bot is going to be attached to Iceman in some capacity, which means when this album eventually surfaces, it will be tied forever to the image of a nearly 40-year-old man making a giant cloud to impress someone who is currently buying churros at Disneyland. I genuinely cannot think of a single Drake song, not God's Plan, not One Dance, not Take Care, not anything, where this level of theatrical spectacle would even make sense. Drake doesn't hold that kind of artistic weight. Kanye could pull this off, Travis Scott could, Jay-Z could, Drake absolutely cannot.
While Drake's fans are celebrating that he's finally outside and doing something, what they're actually watching is a man who knows deep down that his music cannot stand on its own. He knows releasing Iceman is inevitable at some point, but he also knows he needs every possible theatrical layer to cushion what the actual music is going to sound like when it lands. And so he is making Michael Bay productions to try and compensate for what his pen cannot deliver. Kendrick could change the entire rap world with a single line. Drake needs a smoke cloud just to get people talking.
And back inside the propaganda machine, the new talking points from the OVO camp are running on 3 tracks right now. 1. Act like they know far more than they actually do. 2. Act like they know when Iceman is dropping. 3. Act like it's going to be the greatest album ever made. And right in the middle of all this performative hype, Anthony Fantano decided to step in and troll the entire operation. And what happened next was genuinely one of the funniest things to come out of this entire era.
Fantano posted a video claiming he had an exclusive source confirming Iceman would drop within the next 36 hours. It was obvious satire. He was clearly mocking the culture around this rollout. But the Drake fanbase, the very community that calls itself Project Bot, could not detect the sarcasm at all. They immediately crashed out. The glazing went into overdrive. The personal attacks on Fantano started flooding in. And academics and Maul turned it into a full-on competition to see who could defend Drake the hardest while accomplishing the least.
And then Maul came out with a quote that tells you everything about where this entire camp is at right now. He said, and I'm paraphrasing because the original is embarrassing, that these are some of the best raps he's ever heard from Drake, that it's crystal clear who the top dog is, and that after this, no stone goes unturned. The phrase top dog, used intentionally or not, directed at Kendrick's label. That's the level of thought going into these talking points, and the content of the quote itself is saying that Iceman is going to be a concept album about the beef, about Kendrick Lamar, about everyone who wronged Drake.
And that right there is the confirmation nobody wanted to say out loud, but everyone already knew. Iceman is not a redemption arc. It is not a rebrand. It is not Drake accepting the loss and showing growth. It is going to be a diss album. A long, sprawling, emotionally immature crash-out album directed at Kendrick, at Metro Boomin, at LeBron, at Rick Ross, at the label, at everyone Drake feels betrayed him over the last 2 years. Which, go ahead and count the list of names. This might be the most targeted piece of recorded music in history.
Which is exactly why it is going to be a disaster. Because the real battle Drake should be fighting right now isn't against Kendrick Lamar, it's against himself. Kendrick already told us this was going to happen. After the beef ended, the only real competition Drake has left is with his own legacy, his own character, and his own inability to grow. And instead of meeting that challenge with honesty and real artistry, he is making a spite album, a cloud in the sky, a red button that nobody asked him to push.
And then, going back to academics, after Fantano continued trolling with a second video suggesting that the reason Iceman got pushed back was because people got too excited and scared Drake off, academics responded by claiming they actually planted a fake release date specifically to fool Fantano. As if that's a flex, as if feeding false information to a music critic and then laughing about it on stream is some kind of victory. What it actually shows how deep inside their own echo chamber these people have gotten. They are lying to each other at this point. They can't tell what's real anymore.
And here's the bigger picture that gets lost in all the day-to-day noise. Drake is building an album around a conflict that isn't even the core conflict of his career problem. The reason Drake's career isn't in trouble isn't just because of Kendrick Lamar. It's because of who Drake has been as a person to the people around him. It's because of how he treated Metro Boomin after Metro's mother died and never apologized for it. It's because of how he handled everyone who trusted him. And not a single word of accountability is going to appear on Iceman. Not one. What academics is calling Drake derangement syndrome and people who criticize the rollout is just another deflection. He's framing every outside voice as unhinged opposition, rather than acknowledging that the people pointing and laughing are doing so because the rollout is objectively one of the most chaotic and embarrassing in mainstream hip-hop history. The roadblocks Drake is facing are not coming from conspiracies, they are coming from his own decisions. That's the part the camp refuses to acknowledge. And this is the fundamental disconnect with Iceman as a concept. The album Drake should be making, if he actually wanted to reclaim any ground, is one that faces himself directly. Not Kendrick, Not Metro, not LeBron, not the label. Him. His character. His choices. His evolution as a person. Kendrick already told us that after the beef, the battle Drake was going to face was entirely internal. And instead of rising to that challenge, Drake is making a spite cloud and calling it Project Bot.
And while all these Iceman supporters are projecting everything onto Fantano and critics, pretending that outside voices are the problem, what's actually happening is that the echo chamber is getting smaller and louder at the same time. Academics is now claiming he planted information specifically to trap Fantano, which would mean he deliberately lied to his own audience in order to execute a prank. And he's presenting that as evidence that everything is under control. That should concern even the most loyal Drake fan.
But the people who are genuinely going to lose out the most when Iceman finally drops are the fans. The ones who have been told for 2 years that this album is going to be the greatest, the most important, the career-defining comeback. When the actual music lands and they have to sit with it honestly, not pretend, not defend, just actually listen, the disappointment is going to be severe. Because Drake hasn't processed the beef, he hasn't accepted it. He doesn't understand the core problem with his career. And an album made from that place is going to reflect every single one of those unresolved failures.
Because here's the truth about artistic evolution that applies to every great artist: Jay-Z, Nas, Eminem, Kanye, Lil Wayne. The reason artists grow into new chapters of their careers is not just because the game changes around them. It's because the person driving it actually evolves as a human being. They process things, they change, they grow. And when that stops happening, when a person stagnates, when they refuse to be honest with themselves, the music stagnates with them. And that is exactly where Drake is right now. He has not processed the events of the beef. He has not accepted what happened. And he doesn't understand why people turned on him in the first place. Or he does understand it and is too afraid to face it. Either way, Iceman is going to launch us right back to phase 1 of the same cycle. Because instead of creating something new, something honest, something that actually shows growth, he's making a Kendrick Lamar response album 2 years later. And that is going to be the very thing that seals the failure of this era for good.
Drake will never mention the lawsuit on this album. He will never address what really happened behind the scenes with his label. He will never look inward and acknowledge why so many people, including people who were close to him, ultimately turned their backs on him. The Metro Boomin situation alone is a perfect example. Drake publicly attacked a man who was grieving his mother. He doubled down on it. He never walked it back. He never apologized. And if by some miracle Drake put even one genuine moment of accountability on this album, just one, it would say more than anything else he's ever done. But that is not what we're going to get.
What we're going to get is more dissing, more deflecting, more pointing fingers at everyone except the mirror. And because of that, Iceman is going to do something no beef loss could fully accomplish. It's going to make Drake look worse in a post-Kendrick world, where people were actually willing to give him another chance. That window of goodwill is closing fast, and if he fumbles this album after everything, after all the delays, all the hype, all the promises, there might not be another chapter after this.
If Project Bot is the codename for the direction this album is going, we can already tell what we're getting: a grudge record, a spite project, a body of work built entirely around unresolved resentment rather than genuine artistry. And if that lands the way I think it will, it won't just be another miss. It could genuinely be the thing that ends the conversation about Drake's relevance for good. Everything is riding on this. And the people around him are spending their time trolling music critics and ordering DoorDash instead of asking whether the music is actually good.
So, all that said, let me know what you think. Where is this whole Iceman disaster actually headed? Do you think Drake has anything real left to say on a record? And do you think Project Bot is a sign of confidence or desperation? Because to me, the answer is very obvious. If you made it this far, leave a like and subscribe. It genuinely means everything. And check out the suggested video to see the latest disses Drake has been throwing that aren't working and are only making things worse for him.